Yoshikage Kira has to be by far one of my favorite characters in all of media. Almost everything about him I just love. His design, his personality, his stand, all the arcs he's included with. Every scene with him having so much power and just so much intimidation with him. He has so much that I just love that, in my opinion, he's arguably Araki's most perfectly written character. And that's why after watching part 4 and when I actually started getting into the JoJo community, when I first heard about Dead Man's Questions being a kind of sequel, a continuation of what happens to Yoshikage Kira after part 4, I was excited. And ever since then, ever since I first read it and have read it continuously since then, I have became more and more of a fan of this one shot. Dead Man's Questions. And since what I saw in my recent polls, y'all want to see me review this thing. And I'm glad, because I feel like Dead Man's Questions is one of the more surprisingly lukewarm ones that doesn't have much of any videos on it outside of maybe themes or 2 videos discussing more of just a overview of it. But I want to actually look at it way more, closely, not just give y'all a bit of a preview of what Dead Man's Questions has, more of everything what it says about Yoshikage Kira as a character. And I will highly suggest you read it way before you watch this video. Read it. It's only 3 chapters and it's a very fun read. Go read it. Just read it. Go on Manga Dex, go on Manganello. Just read it. It's a great one shot, and mainly this video is a celebration of Dead Man's Questions. The first reason why I want to say why Dead Man's Questions is such a great one shot is because I feel like it's the perfect continuation of Kira as a character. I remember the first time, and then I will even admit the second time I read it, I was a bit lukewarm on it. I feel like I let my expectations be way too high for this one shot. When I heard the idea that Kira was a ghost assassin who was going out killing other people and all that, I had so many expectations of so much crazy stuff that when I actually read it, I thought it was good. I thought it was all right. But I feel like with further rereads, and mainly the parts that I didn't appreciate enough, specifically the Kira monologues throughout the entire one shot, I feel like I've been appreciating them way more with further rereads. And I feel like the reason why I love these monologues, I feel like they are easily like my favorite moments outside of the shootout scene at the last chapters, because I feel like it's a perfect conclusion, I guess you can say, to Kira as a character. Since part 4 and even since his introduction, he's always just wanted to live that quiet life. The first time we see him, he's basically like going out on a walk, he's eating a sandwich, he's basically having a beautiful duang and all of that. He's getting everything that he basically wants before all the crazy shit happens. Even after everything he does in part 4, his whole goal is basically to still live this peaceful life. And even if in Dead Man's Questions he doesn't know who he was before he died, he is basically living that life. Of course, there's a lot of inconveniences in this way, specifically the ghost rules and having to be careful not to walk into people. But even in the first couple pages of Dead Man's Questions, we see him sitting over the shoulders of a college student reading the newspapers. We see him like ponder on a book about an elephant losing his nose. He gets to be on a view of a train. Of course, there's always a convenience here and there, and I always love those little moments. It's funny one-off moments to see Kira just vibing, just see him like walking around Morio having fun, even if it is a to some people kind of boring. But honestly, I appreciate these scenes because Kira's monologue says a lot, in my opinion. I specifically love the moment when he's given another job from the monk, and the monk specifically is talking about a mansion ghost. And Kira is basically not afraid or anything of that. He's mostly just freaking out of this idea that a ghost is living in a mansion that has like DVDs or TVs and all that. And it gets a lot more funnier when he actually starts exploring there. And we see him like freaking out about, oh my God, this ghost has all these books and all of that. How can he be living such a way more better life than me? And I love those moments, even though they're not filled with action scenes or anything of that. I just love seeing Kira just vibing out, because honestly, just seeing Kira vibing just shows how great of a character he truly just is. And I just love that one shot that it takes, even though it isn't filled with fights or anything of that. It's just seeing Kira just living out the life he basically wanted, with of course a couple stuff here and there, but it's a great way to conclude his character after part 4. Of course, I don't want to misguide people into making it think that Dead Man's Questions is just 3 chapters of Kira just walking around, not doing much. Of course, there are some really entertaining scenes. One of them is the scene with him on the train. He went through this like whole process of renting out a seat so he doesn't have to like, stand in the hallway or like walk around and all that. And he gets to have a nice view, so that's a good thing. And then out of nowhere, this random kid just comes in, starts being annoying, and then Kira does the amazing 180 move of just throwing the kid across with his mom and all that. And then afterwards, he's just having like this whole monologue of like, where does the soul come from? Like how does a mother develop a soul? Which is like, I always wonder what these little scenes are all about. The scene with him getting confused about, how does an elephant lost his nose and all that. It's just little scenes like that I just like. And of course, one of them as well is the scene when he's like trying to, in the first chapter, when he's trying to like get inside this woman's apartment, but she won't budge. And he's like basically like, oh my God, I'm exhausting myself just to try to get a phone and all of that. I just love seeing Kira getting pissed, I guess you can say. And of course, I would be an idiot and not to mention the shootout scene with the ghost cleansers. It's basically just these random things that just eat ghosts and all that. And then basically the one shot just ends. And if I'm being honest, I'm not too big on the last chapter of Dead Man's Question. And I feel like for such an iconic scene as the shootout just is, I feel like it's just kind of forgettable in my opinion. I really forget about this scene a lot of times, and every time I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's in there. I don't know why, but the scenes with him just monologuing or him just like messing around Morio are much more memorable to me than the shootout scene in my opinion. Nothing against Araki or anything, but I just feel like I just feel like overall the last chapter isn't the best one. I easily prefer the first 2 chapters over the last one. And outside of that, I really love this one shot. This one shot is not only great, but I feel like the art style as well really pops out in this one. I feel like Araki's art style in black and white looks really bad digitally. I feel like, of course, physically it looks really great, but every time I find like a digital scan of it online, his black and white art style always looks really bad, which is why I prefer to read it in color. But I feel like with Dead Man's Questions, I don't have that issue. I honestly love the way it looks black and white, and honestly I hope that in one way, shape, or form physically it gets released in English, because I would be the first one to buy it, because Dead Man's Questions I feel like is such a underrated one shot, and I feel like for such a memorable character like Kira to have his own one shot about him being a ghost, I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. And hopefully this video does a good job for anyone who's interested in reading it. Go on and reading it, because I feel like this one shot gets really underrated and it has a lot going for it. Sure, it may not be filled with action packed scenes or anything of that, but I feel like for any Kira lover, I feel like this one shot is perfect. If there's any issues that I have with this one shot, it's probably the fact of the last chapter being a bit forgettable for me, but outside of that, it's just more of like too open-ended. I want more of this version of Kira, because not only is he just one of my favorites design wise, but I feel like it just has a lot of potential for it, and especially for the JoJo world building, since we already do know that ghosts exist and all that. I feel like Dead Man's Question just opens the doors for a lot of stuff to happen. I feel like Araki should explore a bit with the Dead Man's Questions series to see what he could come up with. But hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. Hopefully y'all, start appreciating Dead Man's Questions a bit more. And yeah, hopefully have a wonderful day. Hopefully I made your day and all that. And yeah, have a wonderful life. See ya.